As far as our universe goes, it feels like there is so much that we don't know. The universe is so enormous, how could we possibly know anything about it? In reality, its size is what helps us to understand everything we know. You see, because the universe is so big, it means it is filled with lots of stuff, specifically a lot of star stuff. Because of all these stars that we can see, both in and out of our own galaxy, it gives us many objects to observe, namely, stars.
This is the general cycle of what the life of a star will look like. The life of each individual star has slight variances depending on the mass of the star, but we'll get into that later. First, we are going to explain exactly what a star is and how they are created. Stars don't just randomly pop up. This could be an obvious assumption, especially when considering how huge these balls of gas can get. That being said, where do they come from? Stars are formed on the inside of hot, dense clouds of gas and dust, commonly known as a nebula. Inside of a nebula, the gas and dust that make up stars is very widespread. If there is enough gas and dust inside of these clouds, they will begin to clump together due to gravity. As these clumps get bigger and bigger, they gain more gravity, which draws in more gas and dust. The more stuff gravity sucks in, the hotter it gets, and the more dense it becomes. Consisting mostly of hydrogen, these balls of gas can become very massive.
After a very long time, there will be so much pressure on the inside of these now giant balls of gas, it will reach around 10 million degrees Fahrenheit at its core, thus causing fusion to ignite. At that point, the ball of gas is now considered a star and will begin its main sequence stage. Fusion will continue throughout the life of the star, basically meaning a lot of explosions and the release of energy. This outward energy from fusion pushes against gravity, which is trying to collapse the sun in on itself. This is known as gravitational equilibrium and is what keeps a star at a stable size. When a ball of gas isn't surrounded by enough material to become big enough and have enough pressure in its core, fusion will never ignite and it will stay as a giant ball of cold gas. These are known as brown dwarfs. A close-to-home example of this might be considered Jupiter.
The main sequence of a star is going to take up the majority of a star's life. After ignition starts, the hydrogen inside of these stars will start fusing into helium. This fusion of molecules releases mass amounts of energy in many forms. The most observable of these would be light and heat coming from our own star, the Sun. Because this stage takes up most of the star's life, 90% of stars alive right now are in their main sequence.
Referring back to the beginning, we mentioned that stars can have different life cycles based on their size. Regardless of its size, stars will continue through their main sequence as usual, except that large stars have overall shorter lives. This also means their main sequence will be of shorter length the bigger they are. The kicker with more massive stars is that they have more stuff inside of them. Because of this, after their main sequence is done, they can continue fusion of heavier elements due to the heat and pressure from the increased gravity, while smaller mass stars stop fusion, swell up to a red giant, shed their outer layer of loose hydrogen and helium, and leave behind only their dense core, commonly made of helium. The end of life for a small to average sized star is known as a white dwarf and is just the solid core created by the fusion of the used-to-be star. For giant stars, their death is a bit more drastic. Massive stars go through the same stage after their fusion ends, and because of their extra mass, they are known as red supergiants. After these swell out, they collapse in on themselves in less than a second. This immensely quick collapse of such a massive object produces a huge explosion known as a supernova. This extreme explosion releases insane amounts of energy, often outshining the entire galaxy that the star was located in. Depending on the mass of the star before the explosion, it will either turn into something similar to a white dwarf, only much more dense. A neutron star is what comes from a supernova with a lot of mass. This is the previous core of the star, compacted into a very dense ball. If the red supergiant had enough mass before its supernova, the explosion will compress enough of the material into an even more dense ball. This ball is so dense and has such a strong force of gravity, not even light can escape its pull. This is known as a black hole and originates from red supergiants exploding in on themselves.
Imagine yourself blowing up a balloon that is filled with flour. Once the balloon reaches its maximum potential, the balloon pops and the flour within the balloon shoots out all over the room. Stellar evolution may not seem very important to each of our individual lives, but without this life cycle, there would be absolutely nothing.